How's it going, and welcome to No Fun Allowed's guide series on Curse of Strahd, a 5th edition module. Continuing on with the Ravenloft Castle, part 5. Oh my goodness, we are so deep in here, but still not enough. Of course, going to be a ton of spoilers. Players, do not watch this. DMs that want added insight, let's go ahead and dive right in. Alrighty, continuing on with the Spires of Ravenloft, here we have Area 54, the familiar room. It is not familiar to your players, probably, because it's their first time showing up here. Instead, there are familiars here of the witches, specifically little cats. And these cats are oh so cute, and theoretically these things can go ahead and harm people. Cats do have a whopping total of, a +0 to attack and a +1 to hit. Which is weird because normally familiars, if a PC were to cast them, cannot attack. But of course, you can always amend the rules for these witches because, hey, it's Ravenloft. Change up the rules. So of course, these cats aren't just here just milling about. They are in fact, on alert. And if your players make their presence known, then the witches in Area 56 are going to be aware of their presence and they will act accordingly. But we'll be getting into that in a moment. So double checking to make sure on the Find Familiar spell there. What's interesting is if your familiar is destroyed, you actually don't know that immediately, not unless you try to contact it to some degree. So for that, I would say if your players see 3 cats there just milling about, then maybe your players do in fact have a chance to wipe out these kitties and thus not alert the witches nearby. I would go ahead and leave that to your own discretion if you have that as a house rule in your game or not, or how often do you want the witches checking in on the cats. Maybe the witches only check in on the cats every few minutes or so, nothing too major, and you can always just go ahead and play it by ear. In Area 55, we have the Element Room. Your players come in here, and they will see the classic witch stuff. They have snail hearts, frog's breath, Eye of Newt. I mean, that Eye of Newt, that's just the go-to one, right? So your players will be able to see all this, and they'll think, they're in some sort of classic witch's hut or whatever. As with this area and in Escher's room, if your players open up the window, there is a 50% chance that a vampire spawn crawls through to see what's up. Is this the same vampire spawn that's just crawling around outside? I don't know. It's not giving us in text why this vampire does this. This vampire spawn just basically just hops in here and, just does what it does. But me thinks that there's one vampire spawn that's floating around Castle Ravenloft that's climbing around the outskirts and just casually going through windows for whatever reason. So characters that search the room for a bit may discover that there is some drag marks along the floor, and that'll take us to the northeast corner there, and in fact if your players go ahead and start looking around, they can notice that trap door. That trap door leads us to Area 51 down below, which was the closet, which is in Area 50 and 51 could have ran through here and gotten to this trap door to go ahead and reconvene with all their compatriots. Area 56, we have Cauldron. Your players make their way inside of here, and depending on if they've alerted the witches or not, they get 2 different little prompts here. One of which is you get the classic, you walk in and you see these witches boiling and saying double double toil and trouble, all that fun stuff. However, if they alerted the cats, the witches will know and they will have cast invisibility upon themselves, in which case they'll go ahead and press themselves along the walls here and get ready to strike out. Those of you that have watched the series probably know that witches are my favorite monster in this whole campaign. They're just an absolute delight. What's fun here is it states that witches normally they cast, spells from far away, like they just throw out cantrips or whatever. But these witches in particular, they can just go ahead and alter self and grow claws and go ahead and scratch at the party. I think that's pretty fun. This cauldron is a magical item to some degree. When the cauldron is touched by someone who speaks the proper command word, go raw! It magically heats any liquid inside for 3 hours. It can only be used like this once a day, though. So, of course, players are never going to actually know that command word unless they interrogate the witches. I always hope that my PCs are willing to capture intelligent creatures rather than kill them outright, because capturing people is way more fun and way more roleplay. Captured witches will divulge information to try and, live, and they will go ahead and give out command words, and they'll go ahead and tell all about the stuff that's going on in the castle, and they may go ahead and divulge the fact that they are in fact in league with Morgantha all the way back in the old Bone Grinder. That would be fun. If your players had not dealt with the old Bone Grinder hags, then that could be a fun revelation. Another fun thing is, if your players had dealt with the Coven all the way back in the old Bone Grinder and dealt with Morgantha, then maybe these witches are lost and don't know what to do. and you can have a lot of fun roleplay potential with that. Maybe they go ahead and are just hard at work trying to become as powerful as she was. Or maybe if you have some spellcasting type people that are planning on becoming witches and whatnot themselves, maybe these witches could go ahead and pledge their allegiance to them. For treasure here, we get some fun stuff. Each witch carries a potion of healing. However, there is a 30% chance that each potion has gone bad and is in fact a potion of poison. That is a very, very classic trap there. You give your players a ton of healing potions, and if there is, 3 witches in here, it's very likely that one of them is bad. And you can go ahead and track that. You say, okay, which one's getting wet? And then you go ahead and roll for each person. Oh, perfect. The fighter got the potion of poison? That's going to be terrible. Another fun piece of treasure here is a spell book. However, this spell book is brimming with evil. Any person that touches this that is not an evil creature takes 1d10 psychic damage. That's pretty gnarly. This spell book is a delight, a ton of good spells. However, of course, this is for extremely low level spells. So if you have a level 10 party, they're probably going to scoff at this. Oh, just level 1 and level 2 spells? Pathetic. This is, yet again, just one of the many reasons why I wholeheartedly think that groups should show up to Castle Ravenloft at early levels and get to explore around a little bit. Because finding something like this early on would be an extreme boon, but later on, it's extremely worthless. Now, pretty much wrapping up the witches here, I love these witches, but they simply just don't compete at higher levels. They just don't. Yes, they could theoretically drain some resources, but in 5e, everyone just has cantrips and everyone can just make basic attacks, so more than likely these witches aren't going to be able to do anything. So if you do want them to be a higher challenge, you should go ahead and make them higher level spellcasters, give them more HP, give them more AC, and heck, maybe go ahead and have some fun with some animated weapons around here, such as animated brooms or desk, or whatever the case may be. In Area 57, we have the tower roof. Your players can arrive here one of 2 ways. They can either go through the stairwell in Area 48, or they can come all the way through that beautiful tower, which of course your players will be going up against the heart at that point. To give off the dimensions here, the courtyard all the way down below is 190 feet below, and the roof of the keep is 80 feet below. The stone railing encloses this place, so there really shouldn't be that big of an issue. However, if you roll for random encounters and a random encounter happens here, then perhaps, whatever villain is here may be going ahead and trying to throw people off, because that would be a absolutely awesome thing. And speaking of being thrown off here, we have Area 58, the bridge. A bridge connects the 2 towers here, and unfortunately there is no railing. There is strong winds here, which is scary, but thankfully the winds are not strong enough to push anybody off. However, if anybody were to take damage while they are here, they must succeed on a DC 10 dexterity saving throw or fall 60 feet onto the roof of the keep below. So once again, that's another one of those things. If you have a combat that sparks around here, then it's going to be very scary. A vampire spawn's just going to stand right here and not worry about it because, hey, they don't care. But of course, your players, if they fall 60 feet and now they're separated from the party, that's a huge deal. In Area 59, we have the High Tower Peak. This is a heck of a climb here. As it states, it is a 380-foot drop if you were to fall right down the center. Pretty bad. So if your players climb their way all the way up top from Area 18, that stairwell, all the way down at the bottom, there they can finally get to the top, and it's there where they can find a very unique character, Piddlewick the Second. And I mean, come on, your players climb up the tower and they see this cute little guy. Of course, they're going to be so ecstatic to meet him. Although he appears to be a petite man, he is in fact a clockwork effigy of the real-life Piddlewick. Piddlewick II cannot move his face, so he's simply going to go ahead and gesture to go ahead and convey his emotions. He understands Common, but can't read or write, so you can't have those cheeky players that say, oh, tell us what you need. Nope, it's just going to be a bunch of little pantomiming. If your players are kind, then guess what? They've got an awesome ally by their side, Piddlewick II, who can go ahead and be delightful and merry and show the players around all of Castle Ravenloft, acting as a silent guide. However, if one or more of the characters are mean toward Piddlewick II, its quiet resentment grows, and at some point when the group is at the top of the staircase, it pushes one of the offending party down the stairs. A target must succeed on a DC 10 dexterity saving throw or tumble to the bottom of the staircase, taking 1d6 point of damage for every 10 feet. So this is absolutely delightful. You just have, a bunch of people show up, and then one person in the party is an asshole, and guess what? That one person gets pushed down the stairs. That is just so funny. So obviously a DC 10 dexterity saving throw, more than likely you're going to succeed, so it's not that big of a deal. But what happens if you were to fail? So the information we get here is that it basically says save or suck. If you succeed, nothing happens. However, if you fail, then it's saying that you tumble down the entirety of the staircase. That's pretty rough, because if they're falling, hundreds of feet, then they're going to cap out to take 20d6 damage. That's sort of what it's inferring here. So I would go ahead and temper that a bit. I would go ahead and say that maybe if they fail that first dexterity saving throw, then they do fall 20 feet, and you can go ahead and make them make another dexterity saving throw to see if they catch themselves or not, and have that repeating again and again, and see how much damage that racks up. Now, I will be covering Piddlewick II more in the series pertaining to all of the potential allies, but needless to say, Piddlewick II is just this delightful little guy who, pushed off the previous Piddlewick and killed him. What's really fun here is if you guys have Piddlewick as your, companion, or at least a little guide here, Piddlewick can, in fact, join in on the fight. Piddlewick has a little dart launcher, and he can do a whopping 1d4 plus 2 damage. Wouldn't that just be cute to have in the initiative? You're carrying Piddlewick, and then all of a sudden he's shooting vampire spawn? I think that's pretty fun. In Area 20, we have the North Tower Peak, and it's here where if your players climb all the way to the top of the Area 20 staircase, they can find a pretty unique location. And seemingly in the middle of this room is a bed frame and a ladder. Really, odd, right? At the foot of the bed is a chest, and if your players were to go ahead and open it, there they would find Strahd's crest. And this was placed here by Cyrus Bellview. The chest is locked, and the only person with the key is Cyrus Bellview, who is located in Area 62. We'll be getting to him in a moment. And if your players were to open this thing, whether they bash it or, open it up through nefarious means or whatever, there inside they can find some bejeweled gold crown worth 2,500 gold. Oh, that is so epic. Also interesting is that this is the destination of one of the teleportation devices. If the Fortunes of Ravenloft guide you here, then the item is located in the chest. If the card reading encounter is with Strahd, then he is standing next to the iron chest. The ladder here leads up to Area 60A, the North Tower Rooftop. Your players just show up here, they can look around, and what's interesting is that the thunderclouds above suddenly coalesce into the terrible visage of Strahd, and then bat swarms are going to descend upon them. If your players continue to stand around for 3 whole rounds, then they are going to be accosted by 10 swarms of bats. Shame on them for standing outside when bats are flying toward them, I guess. And here it is, the fabled and terrifying deadly trap, the elevator trap. So your players arrive here in Area 61, and they can arrive here from numerous locations. But it doesn't matter where they're coming from, it is here on this little tile that your players are going to have one heck of a time. So this hallway contains a trap which requires 400 pounds of weight to be pressed upon it. Meaning that if you have a single, person that is not carrying too much gear, then they can walk across this place no problem. But if you have a group of adventurers that are tightly bound together, then this will be an issue. Especially if the people leading are on the heavier end. Once 400 pounds of pressure are put upon this pressure plate, that is when the trap is going to enact. 2 steel portcullises are going to drop down from the ceiling and cut off whoever else is not part of it. So this is a tremendous deal. You need to always specify what the marching order is looking like. You can't have people just moving around willy-nilly, and you always have to guarantee that whoever is there is there. Because if you have only one person that's 400 pounds worth make their way over here, and then as soon as they step on it, then they're going to activate the trap. But if you have people walking side by side and you have the lighter people up front, then it is possible to get more and more people. More often than not, this is not going to hit a full adventuring party. And that is actually the deadly part of this trap. The fact that it separates the party from each other is a big, big deal. So if you have people that are observant looking around with a DC 15 perception check, they can tell that this part of the floor isn't actually part of the floor. And if they make a DC 15 investigation check, they can determine that whatever this trap is, they cannot disable it here. So whoever are the unfortunate souls that get locked away in this little box are immediately thrust forward and up, and everyone else can see that as this box is being raised, they can hear something else getting lowered to the side. So, of course, like I said before, this is incredibly dangerous because the party is split up. Adding to the danger of this place, a creature trapped inside of this box must immediately make a DC 15 Constitution saving throw or be put asleep. That's a big deal. If everyone falls asleep, then, everyone's just basically locked away, and that could prove disastrous. But of course, if you have people that make the saving throw, or they're elves, or whatever, then it's no big deal. So of course, the important thing to note here is if that party is split, then the remainder of the party that's still on the floor here is going to witness all of their friends get shot up, and they may, for some reason, get the inclination to go ahead and go over to the now newly created area to the right. It states here that the block weighs thousands of tons and pulverizes anything in the space when it comes to rest. So if you have someone go ahead and move right, to the right there, then unfortunately some bad times are about to ensue. I would go ahead and say that if you don't want to outright murder someone, you could go ahead and allow them to make a dexterity saving throw, and that'll truly be a save or die. Pretty cool. So when this happens, you have your players roll initiative. And this is a big deal. Even the people that are unconscious need to roll initiative. Your players that are inside this cage can feel that this thing is rising up, and they may go ahead and do drastic measures. There really isn't too much you can do other than look around and see that there is, in fact, a trapdoor at the top. If they are feeling particularly suicidal, they can go ahead and open up that trapdoor at the top. And if they do, woe to them. Any creature on top of the elevator when it reaches the top of the shaft must make a DC 15 dexterity saving throw to avoid being crushed against the ceiling of the shaft. A creature takes 8d10 points of bludgeoning damage on a failed save, or half as much on a success. The elevator will remain at the top of the shaft until the lever in Area 31 is moved to the down position. When that happens, the trap resets in one round. The portcullis comes down and the elevator compartment descends into place. So of course, this is insanely deadly because it's splitting the party. For the development here, we have the sound of the elevator moving can be heard throughout the castle. Characters who are trapped or asleep are easy prey for Strahd, who can reach them by way of the trapdoor in Area 47. Like I said, it isn't a deadly trap natively because the only way you can take damage from this is if you stand in the way of some falling thousands of ton block, or if you go ahead and stand on top of an elevator that's rising up. Hopefully your players do not do dumb things like that. But if they are separated, they are easy prey, and that's what Strahd wants. A party that becomes separated in Castle Ravenloft is practically doomed. There is no real way you can easily get to everyone, quickly, especially through this trap. They are so far apart, vertically and horizontally. They will just be so far away. And if they have not explored Castle Ravenloft, they're not going to know where the heck they're going. And that is a tough one to consolidate. If you're playing at the table or online or whatever, how do you handle parties being split apart? Typically, we like to avoid that. I know for a fact a lot of people have taken out the elevator trap entirely. I know Lunch Break Heroes has done an excellent rendition of his own version of this trap. Go ahead and check him out for that. Me personally, I like keeping it classic, and I like separating the party because they start sweating a lot more. In Area 62, we have the Servants Hall. Your players make the way in here, and there they'll see a figure approaching them, Cyrus Bellview. Cyrus has been working here for quite some time. He is a faithful and loyal servant, although he is absolutely crazy. Once again, he will be absolutely covered in the cast of Castle Ravenloft because he is a unique and interesting character. When your players come to meet this character, they will find out that this guy is one of the Bellview family, of course. And what's also interesting here is that he has an item on him, a hag eye that was given to him by Morgantha to spy upon Strahd. However, Cyrus doesn't actually know this. He was just basically given this item and, he's none the wiser. Poor old Cyrus is obviously crazy. He has served the master for uncounted years and is devoted to him. Cyrus tries to get the characters to retire to their room in Area 49. If the characters aren't sure where it is, he offers to lead them. However, here's the funny thing. If he tells the players, hey, go ahead and go back to your rooms, but they ask him to show them to the rooms, then he's going to lead them to the elevator trap, which is hilarious. But of course, there's something in this text that's not taken into consideration. What happens if your party just immediately just got separated by this, trap, and the remaining players come through here? Obviously, Cyrus is smart enough to know that the trap just got activated, so it's not going to work. He is just going to go ahead and show them to the rooms at that point because, half of the people are already split apart. He's just going to go ahead and lead the others to where he thinks they need to go. Of course, your players may be skeptical of this guy and not take his orders and go ahead and just follow him around. He is going to go ahead and continue his work in Area 65. He is cooking up some, lively food. If your players like accosting poor individuals, they could go ahead and take his keys, and those keys could prove useful as well. Your players can go ahead and interrogate this guy, and on an easy DC 10 intimidation check, they can make him divulge the purpose of the keys, which we'll be getting into in a moment. This location leads to several different doors and several stairs, and to the far east there, your players can in fact actually see through the portcullis into Area 63, the wine cellar. In Area 63, we have the wine cellar. The only way to get in here is by lifting these heavy rusted bars. This requires a DC 20 athletics check. If you've got some beefy people in your party, then they can go ahead and open up and make their way inside, and it's here where they'll find a whole bunch of cask and rats. The cask, for the most part, are harmless, however some are not, but the rats are also not harmless. These, in fact, are poor little Cyrus's pets. Should your players come in here and start looking at every single one of these casks, they will discover that they are cask all of the Wizard of Wine's wineries, and some of them show they are Champagne du Leston, Red Dragon Crush, and all that fun stuff. Lining the interior of the 6th cask, there is in fact some yellow mold, some pretty gross stuff. It requires a DC 13 perception check to spot this, but if they don't spot this and start making their way inside, then they're going to start getting jacked up. If your players open up this cask, then unfortunately some bad news bears, and a 10-foot cube originating from this area. Everyone has to make a DC 15 Constitution saving throw, or take 2d10 poison damage, and become poisoned for 1 minute. And while poisoned in this way, they take 1d10 damage at the start of each of its turns, and they can go ahead and make a saving throw at the end of each of their turns. But that's not nearly as deadly as this black pudding. There in the southern cask, your players couldn't find in the middle cask, there is a black pudding that bursts forth if the cask is broken open. A black pudding is always a damper on everyone's parades because they typically jack up weapons and armor alike, and are just absolutely no fun allowed. If your card reading guides you here, then in fact the treasure is located in the empty cask along the north wall. Pretty cool. In Area 64, the guard stair, just another one of these ridiculously long spiral staircases that leads to many of the floors of Castle Ravenloft. Should your players climb all this way up here, they can go ahead and make their way over to Area 68. In Area 65, we have the kitchen. Should your players make their way in here, they'll be able to smell foul odors, and even more terrifying, should they look into the pot of the stew that's being cooked, there they'll see 3 zombies are trying to claw their way out. If Cyrus is here when this happens, he's going to go ahead and grab a heavy club and beat them back into the pot. And he will explain, "I'm just not the cook I used to be." That's pretty comical. If your players have a certain rapport with Cyrus Bellview at this point, that's just going to add flavor to this comedy, and it's just phenomenal. In Area 66, we have the Butler's quarters. Your players make their way in here, and they'll be able to see that this is an absolute junk pile. And the reason for this is because Cyrus grabs little trinkets and ornaments off of all the dead adventuring parties that arrive here, and he takes them back to here. And also, adding more flavor to the excellent character that is Cyrus, if Cyrus is with the party, the characters notice that he is caressing their equipment and chuckling to himself. He looks forward to adding their equipment to his little collection after Strahd gets done dealing with them. In Area 67, we have the Hall of Bones. Just imagine you open up a door and the walls, ceilings, floors, the furniture, just bones galore. That would be terrifying. And you can just only imagine how many people Strahd has slain himself and all of his minions have slain over the course of however many hundreds of years. That is a terrifying sight. You can't fathom that until you see it. And when you see it, that is when you truly begin to realize, man, can we actually pull this off? Everyone else failed. There is a very important detail that is almost glossed over here. This room is desecrated ground. The big thing about desecrated ground is undead standing in desecrated ground have advantage on all saving throws. That's a big deal Because if you have to fight Strahd here, Strahd is going to want to stay in this room. He's going to be having a great time succeeding on all those saving throws. So Strahd did not order this construction himself. At one point, this used to be just a normal room. Cyrus Bellview, though, has been pretty busy. He has taken the bones of a lot of the previous people in the castle and all the dead adventurers and made this collection his own. There are dark stains on the floor, and that is when Strahd slew his castle guards oh so many years ago. So if your fortunes of Ravenloft guide you here, then it's just sitting there right there on the table. And if Strahd is found here, he is sitting in one of the chairs, holding the skull of an ancient enemy. But here's the real kicker. The dragon skull. The dragon skull of Argynvost is located right here. So if your players have the quest to bring Argynvost's skull back to Argynvost, then after all the searching, they'll find it right here. But the real question is, how the heck do they get this thing out of here? This thing is huge. It is a pretty, big object. It is basically a medium-sized creature object, and it also weighs 250 pounds. What that infers is whoever is carrying this thing, even if you do have someone who can carry this thing, they couldn't do it in a backpack or anything of that nature. They would have to be carrying this thing. And that's a big deal. If you have someone carrying it, that means they're not carrying weapons or whatever. And of course, if they are carrying this, then, that's one less person in the fight and all that fun stuff. Especially if it's more than one person carrying this skull. If it is 2, 3, 4 people all having to share the load and carry this thing, that is going to take a huge toll on the party. Now, if your players are here for the final confrontation, and then this probably isn't going to matter. You can go ahead and hand wave this after Strahd has been defeated, and then your players can, at that point, light the beacon at Argynvost, and that'll be cool. But if you want to do this in the middle of the campaign, you have to pull off a grand heist. You have to come to Castle Ravenloft, get this skull out of here, and you got to drag it all the way back to Argynvost. That is a tremendous deal. I would say don't make it easy. Don't make it an easy montage for them to just grab this thing. Because what's the point in that? They're going to get this huge reward and next to no effort. Make this challenging. Make it so that whoever is carrying this thing, whether it be 1, 2, 3 people, that is going to slow down the group. That is going to make them weaker in a fight. And of course, people are going to pick on them for it. And it's going to be crazy. It's going to take a long time to get this thing out of the castle itself because of all the tight twists and turns. You're going to be hounded by all of the creatures in the Castle Ravenloft. And once they get this thing out of the castle, they have to drag it all the way back to Argynvost. That is a huge, huge distance. So make this tough. Make it challenging. But make that reward worth it. Because once they bring Argynvost's skull all the way back, then they're going to get that sweet, sweet bonus and to save the day for all those poor, poor souls that have been languishing in anger this whole time. That is a phenomenal reward. Wow, 67 locations done. Oh my goodness. We are so close. We're so close to that bottom floor there. But we got to finish up the top. We are just about ready to be finished with that. I can't wait for that. That is going to be fantastic. So go ahead and tell me, what are your favorite parts about this location? Do you like Cyrus Bellview? Are you going to change up the elevator trap at all? Are you going to split the party? All those questions are a big deal because if you split the party, then they're screwed. If your players like Cyrus Bellview, then it's going to be hilarious, etc., etc. Go ahead and tell me all those things because I want to know. That's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all my awesome patrons up there. You guys are absolutely incredible. Thank you so very much. That is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.